Hi, I'm Bill Lokey, and today we're going to talk about codependency. You've heard that word probably for decades now, and I think there's still some fuzziness around exactly what it means. Codependency can also be just talked about as sometimes a person overreacts or underreacts. If you've ever had that comment made of like, oh, you're overreacting, or why are you always so nice, or why you're always trying to do things for other people, and yet on the inside, you know, though, if this impacts you, you know that really there's also some resentment that's there. That's one of the telltale signs of you're kind, you're nice. You say, yes, I'd love to. And inside you're really going, dang, why can't I say no? There's this thing that happens, and I want to talk about what that thing is. And so whatever you've heard about codependency, I'd like to see if we can clear that up just a little bit. Or maybe this is going to add to some things you've already learned. Codependency is not just loving someone. I want you to know right now, we're not talking about becoming self-centered, not talking about becoming more selfish. Oh my goodness. We don't want to do away with all the kind people in this world. It's not the purpose of talking about codependency. I really like kind people. What it's about is really then codependency looks like on the outside when someone may be trying to be kind is what it looks like, but really it's about control and manipulation. One of the characteristics about codependency is there's a fear that's going on inside of the person that may be like, if I see you having feelings, if I see you having, let's say you're starting to have some tears about something, or you're starting to get angry a little bit, my anxiety goes up if I have codependency or if I have a level of codependency. And when my anxiety comes up, I'm like, oh man, I got to get my anxiety to go down. I'm not even aware of trying to get my anxiety to go down, but I'm doing something to get you to be okay, to get your feelings to come back down. And then I can kind of sigh with relief. Don't even know you're really doing it, but it's prompted by anxiety, by fear. And you're maybe not even aware of that. Let me give you an example. So one day, a number of years ago, Laurie, my wife, and I were riding home on a Sunday morning, beautiful Sunday morning. We had been at church and we were coming home. And one of the things we like to do a lot of times on Sunday is to go bike riding. Now, the fact that my wife used to be a triathlete may tell you a little bit about that. When we go on a bike ride, I just try to keep up. But we were looking forward to going on this ride. And on the drive home, Laurie started to kind of have this look on her face and begin to want to process something just a little bit about something that she had been thinking about that I guess was a little bit on the negative side. And I saw that look in her face. I saw that edge to her voice. It wasn't about me even. It was just about something else. And immediately inside, the little knot in my stomach came up and I was like, oh man, the loving thing to do here, right? You're going to laugh in a minute maybe, is to get my wife in a better mood. And so I'm telling her, and I start to try to change the subject. And she comes back around to it. And we go to try to change the topic again. And she comes back around to it. And finally, there's just this silence. And of course, if you have a partner or you're married, you know that's usually not a good sign. And finally, she said, I don't think you want to hear what I have to say. And there was a part of me going, you're right. I don't want to hear what you have to say. But then finally recovery kicks in and I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, wait a minute. And go ahead. And really didn't take her that long to process what she was trying to process. But to understand that, what you got to know is that you got to rewind the tape of my life. And to understand that moment, what happened with Laurie in the car is when you rewind back to my childhood, I'm one of those that grew up in a household where I had one older brother and my mom and my dad. And you know, a lot of you may have grown up in homes that were really good homes. You had some really great things that took place. And my mom and dad were very loving people. My brother, I'll maybe tell other stories on him where he protected me a couple of times. But there were these moments also growing up where a lot of you may have experienced as a parent where you get to your limits. And then there is this anger maybe that comes out. And I know that there were some of my mom's wounds that she was also dealing with as well that I didn't know at the time. But there were times when she would come out with this anger really fast, and as a little kid, I was like, whoa. And so I learned as a little kid that if I could try to see the look on her face, if I could see the demeanor and then get my mom in a better mood, especially if I could do that up front before she got angry, that I felt like I was going to be in a better place. Now, you got to fast forward back to the car trip with my wife to realize that in that moment, what I didn't understand until later was that as my wife started to process something a little bit negatively, that instinct came up inside of me, and it was like, oh my gosh, I got to get her in a better mood. I got to make things be okay. And then when recovery kicked in, it's when my rational brain kicked in line. And then I was able to go, oh yeah, this isn't the same thing. This isn't the same thing that's going to happen. And I was able to just sit there and listen and process and talk with my wife. And it was fine. For some of you, then you may find that there are these moments that this anxiety comes up and it doesn't seem to make rational sense. It's not maybe really a threat, but it feels like one because it is bringing up something from the past. And now here you are in that place of fear again. And then we try to, okay, what can I do to fix that? So where does the fear come from? That's one of the things some of you may say, well, I grew up in a home where things were pretty good. Now, some of you may know right where the fear came from. You may have grown up in a home where there was abuse, or there was harm, or there was hurt, or there was some severe raging, or other things where you go, I know exactly where the fear came from. But others of you may go, I don't have any big wounds. I don't really know what took place, but still, I know that there is this anxiety place where I still feel like I need to step in and make things be okay. Some of you may find that you really can't say no when you want to say no if someone asks a favor of you. Some of you may know that you feel like you need to be in control all the time, well, no matter what the setting is. Some of you may know that it never feels like it's okay to just kind of let down and just play and just be silly a little bit. You've always got to be serious. Some of you may know this feeling that if you're in a relationship, you really have to put up with a person crossing boundaries or a person treating you a way that you really don't want to be treated, but it feels like you have no choice because you don't want to do something to jeopardize the relationship. For others of you, you may find that you're doing things that somehow still keeps you in control and keeps down the anxiety. And when you're around other people, you don't feel like a lot of the time that you can be real, that you can be yourself. You're having to be as nice as you can. And what I want you to know is that initially that draws people to you, and it may make it where you're a really nice person. And again, we don't want to get rid of nice people. But if you're not able to be yourself, then what you begin to find is that slowly you'll find that there is this resentment that starts to come up. There is this, even an anger that begins to build, that why can't I really say what it is that I want to say? Why can't I stand up with this person? Why can't I be equals? And so in a lot of relationships, you may even find that either you find yourself being one down so that there's not conflict, or that you really show up and try to be super competent so that no one will have any complaints about you. So the fear, then, where it comes from, no matter what kind of a family you've grown up in, oftentimes there are these messages that you get that maybe your parents didn't even intend to give you. So again, this is not about blame. And just know when we talk about our past, I want you to know we're never blaming someone. We're never blaming our parents. We're never blaming our caregivers or whoever you grew up with. It's not about blame. It's not about always looking backwards, but it is understanding just here's what happened and how am I now reacting to this? What am I doing with that in my reality, in my present? Because if all I do is blame someone else, all I do is make of me a victim. And victims can't make good decisions about my present or my future. But if I look at just what happened and then take responsibility for how I am in life, Then what I am is I'm being a responsible adult, trying to make some good decisions and living proactively about my present and my future. So about where these messages and the fear comes from is I want us to look for a moment at a child, let's say, growing up with, let's say, with a mom and dad. A lot of you didn't grow up with your biological parents. You had maybe a single family or grandparents or adoption or whatever else there may have been. But just for the sake of understanding where those messages came from, I'd like to show you a sculpt, give you an example of where these come from. And then what you're going to see is, in this case, a mom and a dad and the child. And as the child is growing up, you begin to see that while there are these things that naturally come up inside of us, we have feelings, needs, desires, longings, and hopes that just are ours. We just grow up, we are born, and as we develop, we slowly have these things internally. But what we begin to find is sometimes where we're growing up, if some of those people, even without meaning to, give us other messages that these things that you're feeling, that's not okay. You can only feel happy. Or these things that you're thinking, these messages aren't okay. You need to think this. Then slowly we begin to have those things replaced that are real with what someone else says. If you're going to be accepted by me, this is what you've got to live by. This is what you've got to believe. And so when you see this, I want you to begin to understand, once you grow up with some of these messages being given, then we try to live our life out as if those were true. So let's take a minute and watch this. So we talked about codependency, and I want to give you an example. If codependency really develops out of pain, we've got a volunteer right up here, Marcus, and thank you for doing this. And so we're going to start off by looking at, let's say this is Marcus when he just comes into the world. When he's a very, very small child. Obviously, he grew up really quick. But as he first comes into the world, there are just certain things that are true about you and me. And for you, when you come into the world, I've got some signs for you to just so that we can show this. But one of these things is that when you come into the world, you just got feelings. We come in with feelings. You don't know that you're having feelings. You're just a baby. But if you're going to have a baby and they begin to cry because they're hungry or something, you're going to know they got feelings. So hold on to that for a moment. You're also going to have needs. And as we get just a little bit older, we become aware of needs. But even if you've got a baby, you know that, you don't change the diaper, they're going to let you know. So put that one behind that one. We're going to kind of start these in order in a minute. But there's also this thing about, as we get a little bit older, these things called desires. They're not that they're bad or good, they just are. But as we come into the world, it's learning that I have desires. And then we learn later on, how do I communicate those? So here's another one that's maybe true for you. Another one, as we get a little bit older, we become aware of longings. And these longings are these deeper things down inside of, I long to be loved or I long to be seen. They're a little bit more than the desires. They go deeper than that. And then finally, at least as far as our signs go, we got one about hopes. And this becomes about that we start to have hopes for things that we really wish could happen. But for a lot of us, we find that a hope at some point in your life has maybe been dashed. And then another hope gets dashed. And then another hope until at some point in our lives, for a lot of us, we've said, I'm not going there anymore. I'm just not hoping anymore. I don't want to get disappointed over and over and over again. And so we begin to put walls up so that we don't even go here. But coming into the world, these things, we have the abilities for these to start to just happen. So take that one too. And then just to kind of represent that these are yours. So see if you can just kind of put all these on, put over your head. Okay. Now that we've got all the ropes tangled up and things like that. Now this represents just Marcus as he comes into the world, and these are some of these things. These are his feelings, needs, desires, longings, and hopes that are his. They're not the same as his parents. They're not the same as other people. You've got yours, but something begins to happen along the way. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to bring up a set of parents. In this country, I have heard it said, I don't know if it's true exactly, but heard it said that really a much, much smaller percentage of our population actually grow up with their biological mother and father. Oftentimes there's families of single parents or adopted families and so on and so on. But we've got some volunteer parents today. They're not Marcus's real parents. So Mom, come on up. We've got Kim right here. And then David, come on over on the other side. Obviously, if they were his real parents, they got started really early. And but if Marcus is their son, they come in and he starts to come into the world and he's got these things that are just happening. And so if they were perfect parents, right? I mean, why not be perfect parents? If they were perfect parents, what they might do initially is they would really kind of step into, as they begin to try to teach him what it means to grow up in this world, they're going to show him that when certain things aren't working, like if he's thirsty, takes his sippy cup and maybe throws it and hits Mom in the forehead to say that he's thirsty, they may help teach him to go, that's not how the best way to communicate that you're thirsty. They'll be teaching him and showing him, even though your thirst is okay, these are ways that you do it without hurting other people or hurting yourself. But they're not going to teach him your need of thirst is wrong. They're just going to show him the way you're doing it. And so he keeps learning some stuff. He keeps learning. And so eventually, as he grows into maybe even young adulthood, he's going to begin to know that while I've learned some really good stuff from my mom and my dad, or from my parents or the people that are raising me, I also have this ability to check inside my gut and to see, wait a minute, what's the information that my own gut's given me? What are my own instincts? What are my own things? And that allows me then to slowly, instead of just react to things in life, I can respond to things in life. I can then look at things in situations and go, wait a minute, who is it that I am? And how is it that I want to be in this situation right now? And then I get to choose from this and the stuff I've learned as well. And so then instead of just reacting, as I said, we slowly can learn to respond, to check out the things that are going inside. And then as I learn all of that, I become a responsible person where I can make good decisions about relationships and other things in my life. However, let's say that we don't have perfect parents. Dang it. But instead let's don't use that we've got terrible parents. They're not necessarily in this example abusive parents where it would be really obvious where pain comes from in our life. I think a lot of times what I'll have are people that go, I don't know why I have some of these codependent type characteristics, but because, things in my family seemed okay, pretty much normal, pretty much kind of normal. So I want to use more of that example so that this might be something that more people can relate to. So instead of these messages, what you well-meaning parents may do is just because you're busy or because you've got some of your own wounds in life, and I know that when you become a parent, you all know, if you've been a parent, that we not only parent out of our strengths, but we parent out of our own wounds as well. So let me grab some more signs over here. And on these signs, what we're going to do is we're going to replace the ones that Marcus has. And so with things that maybe unintentionally the parents wind up giving him just by their behaviors or possibly by what you say. So read what's on the back of your feeling side.
I feel sad.
All right, so Mom, give him that message back.
Don't feel sad, be happy.
So he's learning right off the bat, for whatever reason, she wants him to be happy, so maybe that's the message she gives him. Maybe with words and maybe it's just through actions. So take off your feeling sign, because what she's slowly doing is saying, here's the message, here's the thing that's more important to have. So don't put it on his head yet because he hasn't internalized it. Okay. He's still learning it. But you give this back to Mom, and then what's the big word on the front say?
Happy.
Can you show happy? All right.
Happy, yes.
And so we go into the world, and a lot of you maybe can relate to, I got to put on the happy face even though that's not where I am. But that's not horrible. Now read what's on the back of the next card, your needs card.
I need you to hold me.
And Dad, respond to that one.
You're too needy.
There's one more that's in the gut. So begin to exchange your needs card for that one. And again, maybe Dad doesn't say it. Maybe it's more of just this is the messages he got from his dad's actions, or maybe he didn't quite have as much time. So read what's on the front of that card.
Do what others need.
All right. So he's starting to learn that what I'm going to do is I got to kind of seek and scan and find other people and notice what they need, which can again turn out to be looking like a really sweet child. What does other people need? How do I try to help make that be okay for them? All right, what's the back of your next card?
I want to take art lessons.
So Mom?
That's a waste of time. Be a doctor.
Okay, can't make as much money sometimes, at least in art, although some people really do. So take off, this was a desire of yours. But you again begin to get this message instead, and what's the one that says on the front?
It says, make parents proud.
Now, there's pretty much a normal thing that happens, I think, with kids, is they usually want to make their parents proud. So there's something pretty normal about that. But this is a little bit more than that. This is maybe when the parent tries to live vicariously through the child, when they really don't get much of a choice. And so you begin to get the message, again, through words or actions. Yeah, don't do the art thing. That's a great thing just to do on the side. But if you're going to make money, you got to do something that really is solid. And you may get that message. And so another disappointment happens inside, but you're going, these are really important people to me. And if I'm going to have their acceptance, then I got to start learning what's acceptable. And then, of course, some kids kind of do the opposite when they've found that they're angry, and that's how they have their voice to be known. But others will say, okay, I got to figure out how to do what Mom and Dad want, or whoever these important people are. All right, what's your next one?
This one says, I long for my mom, but she's drunk again and I'm scared.
So Dad, what your response might be?
She's not drunk, she's just tired.
So trade that card off. And the front of this card says,
your longings are wrong.
So what some people got taught, some of you may have gotten taught, is that when something happened at home, maybe it was, in this case, the mom's drinking and the child is or the mom or the dad, either one, and the child's like, whoa, I'm starting to freak out a little bit, or they're not available to me. Some of you got taught that from the parent or another important person in your life, what you feel, what your instinct is wrong. Or maybe even your longings are wrong. You may have even gotten told, I'll tell you what is right, even though your gut tells you something different. And so some people, especially in trauma, have learned, I can't even trust my own instinct. I got to wait for somebody else to tell me what's right. And so we learn to just shut off our access to what's going on inside. And so what we got to do is like, I got to either start to get those back, or I'm not going to have a good sense of or a good instinct of things, or we keep learning how to cut them off, which we'll talk about that in a second. All right, your last card.
I'm mad at you, and I hope you all will listen to me.
All right, Mom.
How dare you be angry with me? Get over it.
All right, yeah, good job. You put some emphasis. So taking that card off, put this one on, and what's the front of that one say?
It says, don't dare to hope.
Yeah. And so for some of us, we lose that desire to even hope. It's just going to get creamed. It's going to get pushed down once again. And it may be, again, that Mom or Dad says, how dare you be mad at me? I'm your mom or I'm your dad. Again, you may not hear those words, but you may feel the reaction where, oh, it's not okay to be mad at Dad or Mom. Or it's not okay to be mad at as we grow older, my professor at college, or this person or this friend. It's like, whew, that's not safe. People don't like it when I have feelings. And so then we learn these cards. And as we do, so go ahead and put those over your head, representing now that he's doing his best to kind of internalize these, to learn them. Because again, if he learns these, then he's going to be able to have a better response. I want you to think for a moment that when you've ever been asked a question by somebody before, have you ever had the experience that when you did, you first thought, wait a minute, what is it they want to hear before you answer them?
Yes.
And that's us rifling through our card catalog. It's like, wait, the answer's in here somewhere. Don't tell me. I got it. I'll find it. Because once you leave parents, then what you also begin to find is that, well, there's other people. Because you move out, let's say, and you go to junior high, high school. Don't call it junior high anymore. I guess it's middle school. You move into high school, and so you've got maybe a teacher or a friend, or maybe even when you go to a friend's house, a parent of a friend that you go, wow, I really like them. You get into college. You got a professor that you really admire, but they have a different belief system as yours. And so you're starting to try to take on, or they're telling you how you need to think. Now, some of that may be trying to broaden your thinking so that it's not just the same as you've had, but that also is like, okay, well, now I need to start thinking like this person. But we're oftentimes not really encouraged to, wait a minute, here are some facts and here are some really important things to know, but how do you respond to that? How do you want to enter into your world with this knowledge? How would you think you can improve the world and do some things? But oftentimes we just get with, here's the facts, here's how you need to think about it. Now go out into the world and be this way. So as you move out into the world, mom and dad, let me take your cards, but you're no longer in the picture because he doesn't live with you anymore. So you guys come on over, but he's still here. And so what we've got now is as he does enter into the world, he does get more cards to add to your stack. And then you're continuing to try to internalize, to go, okay, what's acceptable? What's important? So once you get these things around your neck, what is it you feel now as you hear these messages?
A little more confused.
Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do?
Exactly.
It does take us into our head a lot going, wait, what is the right thing?
Cautious.
And when you know I'm confused about really basic life stuff, what would you likely feel about being confused about something really important?
Fearful.
Yeah.
To make the wrong decision.
Yeah, it's like if I do the wrong thing. So when we get into our fear, we get back into the fight, flight, or freeze sometimes in our brain where we're reacting. We're not making as good of decisions because we're in this fear place. And so then if you're feeling fearful, if you're confused, but you've been taught you're supposed to feel what? What's that front sign say?
Happy.
Yeah. So then what we're going to do is like, whoa, this is hard to do because I'm supposed to be feeling this, but I'm confused. I'm actually kind of scared. I'm not really feeling that. So then we come up with some ways that we might just not feel. One that worked for me sometimes was chocolate. So that one might work sometimes.
Yeah.
As food or chocolate can sometimes for us just take that feeling down, at least temporarily. Later on, and it comes back. Or alcohol. Alcohol can really kind of take away the feelings temporarily. And if it does, it's like, okay, I just don't want to feel. And we get more concerned in I want to medicate. I want to numb out rather than I want to figure out what's going on inside. Another medicator can be nicotine. Can be a pretty powerful medicator. Another one can be pornography. It's actually a parenting magazine. Would probably have disappeared from the bag at some point. But this can also be a powerful medicator. Now, I'm not talking about sex in a good relationship, in a marriage where it's a helpful thing. I'm talking about more of just using it just to feel the strong feeling from sex so that I'm not feeling anything else, and it can kind of numb out. We can use medicators that are like medication. There's nothing wrong with taking prescription medications that we need, but sometimes we can either use the illegal ones or we can also use ones that we've been prescribed, but we overuse them to just still numb out things that are going to be mood altering. There can be other medicators. There can be things such as there can be a perfectionism, can help take away a sense of anxiety. Or caretaking. I want to make sure and take care of other people out there. Anything that helps to reduce my feelings can help numb me out a little bit so I don't have to feel that. The problem is that when I do that, I don't even know my own heart. And when you and I numb out our hearts, then it's impossible to be intimate with another human being. Because to be intimate, I've got to know what my heart is as I share that with someone, and they can then share theirs back with me so that we can actually be known. This is where we wind up feeling like, okay, I'm getting through life, but I don't really know what's going on inside of me. And then oftentimes we go along for years, maybe even decades, until at some point our life just explodes or implodes. And then we wonder, what in the world happened? And so this is one of the ways we maybe get with that. But for now, we'll let you just at least set them down so you don't have your hands necessarily full. Now, one of the problems is, and I will use you guys here in a second again, one of the problems is you enter back out into the world going, okay, I want to try to now start interacting with people, have relationships, have a career. But if you were given messages like this, and usually most of us are, what do you think you'd start believing about either yourself or about the world around you?
I wouldn't really know what to believe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know how to trust what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Because I've been told that I can't feel that way.
Yeah.
So then I would feel like, what am I doing? Where do I go?
Right. Yeah.
Where
Do I even begin? So would there be some self-doubt?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So one of the messages might be, I don't trust what I know, or I don't trust myself, or I don't trust other people. Would there be any of those that might be true?
Yeah.
All right. So let me just have one of you guys come on back up. They're now no longer your parents. We're going to let these just be actually a message that you hear inside. So one of those might be then, I don't trust myself and I don't trust others. Just remember that. What's another thing that you might feel? And David, come on up, because you're going to be another message. If you were given things like this to have and live with in your life, what's another message or a belief that you might have about yourself when you thought of is do what others need, make parents or other people proud, your longings are wrong, don't dare to hope, just be happy? What might another belief about yourself or the world be?
People have a specific expectation of me.
Okay, all right. So if you'll maybe be that message,
Okay.
People have a certain expectation of me, and I don't know what it is, maybe. So come on back here behind him. Now imagine, and you kind of also right on his shoulder, imagine for a moment that you walk out here, you meet somebody at a conference or something, and you start to begin to try to have a conversation. And as you're starting to try to have that conversation, the negative messages, these things that you've got beliefs inside, start to just play out. And yours was what?
Self-doubt.
Okay, so I don't trust me and I don't trust others. And what was your message?
People have a certain expectation of what
Okay, so just say those same things over and over and over again out loud.
people have an expectation
Don't trust me.
of
Yeah,
what I should
and get louder.
People
Don't
have a
trust
certain
others.
expectation
I
of
don't
what I
trust
should be.
myself.
Do it again,
There's
keep
an
going.
expectation
Don't
of
trust
what I
others.
should be.
I don't trust
People
myself.
have
How would that be?
Terrifying.
Yeah, okay, time out. Now, that's the thing is that's what we do. Is we're up there trying to do something important or having a meeting or whatever, and we start getting all these self-doubts, and these messages start playing, and they're in our brain, and then we're like, how do I fix this? How do I stop it? And for some, it may be like, I can't wait to get out of here and get another beer. Or I can't wait to get out of here and do something that deadens the pain. And so in codependency, one of the things that occurs is that when we have this fear that hits us and we begin to not sure what to do, instead of finding who it is that I really am and looking about those things, what's in my gut and how do I respond, I'm just reacting. And then we really can't engage in the world and in other people and relationships well at all.
Yeah.
So I'll let you guys go again. I wish it was this easy to get rid of these messages. That would be nice. So one of the ways of what do we do? And one of the ways that what we try to help teach people to do is to literally start all the way back to right after birth. And one of those things is, what is it that you feel? Not what is it you know you're supposed to feel. Because I think some people, and some of you watching this, may really have this fear of, if I really begin to feel the grief of something that's going on in my life, I'm afraid I'll never stop crying. Or I'm afraid if I really feel the shame that I have felt about something that I've done in my life, I'm afraid I'll never look at another person in their eyes again. Or if I really start to feel the anger that I think I've got inside, I'm afraid I'm going to explode or something bad's going to happen. And so we begin to be afraid, but it's like, wait a minute, what is it though that I really actually do feel? And this sometimes takes a little while to begin to slowly allow that to occur again. And then it's also asking ourselves some of these other ones too. What is it I desire? And again, how do I make those things be known? What are some of the needs I have in a relationship that I'm in or where I work? And how do I communicate those in a healthy way? And then I love this word, what is it you long for? And this is another one of sometimes I think when we've cut off our hearts, we don't even know what we long for anymore. And when you really know what you long for, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it always in that relationship or in that situation, but it's learning that, wait a minute, but what is that? Because the best chance I have of getting my longings met or my needs met or some of those hopes met is at least if I know what they are and I learn how to express those in a healthy way. That at least gives me the best chance of doing that. But then I can also begin to engage into the world in a way where it's like, wait, this is really me. I don't want to just engage in the world in this pretend way, but I want to know who I am. So then part of the solution is also beginning to take these off. So just for the sake of this, just go ahead and take them off. And that is terrifying for some of us because we know how to do these. Yeah. It doesn't mean that we want them. We know that they're not fulfilling, but they're familiar. And what you and I do is we have this tendency to exchange what I really need for the familiar because we know how to dance around the familiar. And this can be really scary. And so then it is like, it's beginning to pick these back up to go, I want to know what these are again for me. How do I step into this? And then in a relationship, in your work, in your career, or even deciding what it is I want to do, I can begin to look at, wait a minute, how do I respond to things in my life with my heart, with who I am, with what it is I really want. And it still means that sometimes we have to step into conflict or our fear or things like that. But in the old way, it would have been like, I'm not doing conflict, or when I see conflict, I'm just going to bulldoze over the other person so that I don't feel it. This way I get to really look at, wait, what is it I'm really feeling and what is it I need to say to this person? How will I even know if it's a successful repair? Because I'll be aware of what's going on inside of me. And when we can begin to move back here again, we can begin to know our hearts. We can begin to have intimate relationships with people. It changes and helps us to find our passion again for what we do for a living. It helps us in our relationship with God, in our spiritual relationship, so that then in my relationship with God, I can cry out to God and say, God, here is what's going on in me. And here are the feelings, and here are my fears. And here's the way that I'm calling on you and asking you to help me. And I don't even know for sure if that's going to happen. But if I'm faking it, and I'm just trying to fix everything, then what even sometimes we wind up doing is even trying to manipulate God in the way that we pray so that we can fix things and make God happy. And that's not going to work either. So thank you very much for doing this, and I hope this is helpful. So you may have noticed in this sculpt then that if you have now taken on some things that you're trying to believe about yourself, or trying to believe about the world, and you're trying to give the right answers. Have you ever had that example where someone asks you a question and inside you're thinking first, wait a minute, what's the thing that they're going to want to hear before I give them the answer? That's you and me kind of rifling through this internal card catalog of the cards that we've been given all along the way. Because it's not just parents or caregivers that give us the messages, but then when we leave the home and we go to college or we have friends, there are other people that are influencing our lives that also give us what we think are some of the right answers. And then we're trying to then internalize those as well. But what if those don't fit? What if we realize that those don't feel like what's really real? If someone has said along the way, you need to be full of joy. You need to be just happy. You need to just trust. And some of you grew up maybe in homes where the belief was you need to trust God, or you need to trust the people that are around you, or you need to trust others. There's nothing wrong with trusting. There's certainly nothing wrong with trusting God in those things that we need to trust. But here's the problem. The problem is that if I believe then all the feelings that are okay for me to feel is joy and happy, then what happens when I'm not happy? What happens when I'm angry? What happens when I'm hurt, or when I'm lonely, or when I'm full of shame? What happens then? Because then what I'm going to be feeling like is, something's wrong with me. I must not have faith, or my belief is not right, or someone's not taught me well, or I didn't learn it well. And then we begin to only fault ourselves. And the truth is that we're made to have all the feelings. And it's okay to feel all of those things. The truth is also, though, that if I feel those, we learn that around some people, there are only certain acceptable ways to express those things. Now, I'm not saying that when we get angry, you just vent and just let it loose and let it out on somebody else. That's not okay either, because then people aren't going to be able to hear us. We've got to be able to try to express ourselves in ways where we can be heard, but still expressing myself with someone that I care about, that the relationship's important. It's going to be really important for me to also show up and be myself in a way that's still caring and loving of me and of the other person. That's when I can really become knowing who it is that I am, and how do I step into then the fear? As my wife says a lot of times, if we don't step into the fear gets bigger. And instead, stepping into it and going, okay, here goes. But if we are really being ourselves and trying to say, this is really important for me to share right now in this relationship. For instance, if you're angry and you go, this thing that's happening, it's just not working. We got to change this dance. Something about this. I know I've been trying to be kind and be okay and act as if it's okay, but it's really hurting my feelings. And I really need for this to be different. And that way you're sharing it in a way that maybe the other person can hear, but you're also being honest about who it is that you really are. If we don't show up with who we really are, and we feel then the pain, we feel the shame of I shouldn't be this way, we feel that this stuff is building up inside of me and the resentment, then what are we going to do? We're likely going to medicate those feelings. We're likely going to do something to try to make those feelings go away, because I can't live with those feelings all the time, especially after years and years of those building up. And so we'll find things that will help make the pain go away. It's not always the chemicals that we think of as an overuse of alcohol or the use of drugs, and I'm not just talking prescription drugs. Prescription drugs can be fine, but it's talking about the things that we misuse. But it also can be behaviors that we misuse. And whatever it is, if I'm doing something that I know that gets rid of my pain and I do it enough, then what I'm doing is I'm separating myself from my heart. And if I separate myself from my heart, then I can't be intimate with anybody, because intimacy is about showing up with my heart so that they can see me and I can see them. And that kind of a back and forth of being real is a part of intimacy. And so that's one of the harms of codependency, is it gets in the way of intimacy. It gets in the way of me being real. And usually anger and resentment are going to start to build. And then after a while, we begin to medicate away those feelings so that we don't even know what we feel. So one of the things I want you to imagine for a moment is a circle. And in that circle, imagine just the word me written in that, or for you, it's your me written in the center. That's the you that came into the world, that just was born into this world just the way that you are. And then at some point, there is either a wound or a set of wounds or some things that happened to us that brought about usually a sense of shame or a sense of fear in our very core. And so think about that circle, now drawing another circle outside of that circle so that it starts to look a little bit like a target. And in that second circle around the first one, you write the word shame and fear. And imagine that that circle represents the wound, the thing that happened to me, or several things, whether they were big or very small, that I wound up feeling some shame about. Either something that happened to me or something that I did, or something that brought about this fear in my core. And now I feel like I'm covered with this shame and fear so that I'm afraid if someone really sees me, if I'm really vulnerable, that's what they're going to see is the shame or the fear. And so because of that fear of that, I begin to find that there are more feelings that are out there. But what I begin to do is I begin to try to hide those feelings that feel so vulnerable that I don't want you to see. And so then think of a third circle that's drawn outside of those two. So now a third target that's outside. So now it's growing. And on that third circle, then you begin to write some of the things that you begin to do that really, as I might say, is a false self. It's a sense of a false self. These are the things I put forward out there so that if someone's going to begin to see me, I'm going to put this out so you don't really see my core, my vulnerable part. It could be, you're really good at humor, and you've learned to use humor to keep people from really seeing who you are. Humor is a really powerful one because we love to laugh. And if you can really make people laugh, nobody ever really gets to see what's going on inside. Another one might be your intellect. Some of you are really, really smart. And you know that you can use your intellect to kind of keep people at bay so they don't really know anything about your heart. Others of you may find that there is a sense of depression or feeling like a victim that you've had a lot of your life. And so you've learned, I hate to say this, but you've learned to actually use that victimhood a little bit in a way of that when someone starts to get close, you just kind of let yourself like, I know it. I'm just terrible. I'm useless. And then we know that people are drawn to try to help fix us or to make us feel okay. And so that has a little bit of a sense of power to keep people from really knowing all the things that are inside. Whatever it is that you've learned to use, you may have learned some way that even though that may be a real part of your personality, it's still something that's not all of who you are. And so it's what we keep people out with. Others of you may even wind up using anger, rage, becoming really big in some way personality-wise that scares off people a little bit. And they're like, okay, I'm not going there. And some of you, maybe it's just the kindness, the niceness, being a really nice person makes no one think that there's anything else inside. But when you think about all those layers, and then on the outside even of that, there may be other medicators we use. When people look at you then, all they see are those things that we use that's really kind of a false self. That looks like that's all there is when someone talks to me and looks at me. The only thing I know that really penetrates all the way through all those circles to the very center to understand me again is the word grace. If you've ever experienced sitting with someone before who looked at you and just said, after maybe they heard some of your story, and they said, me too. Maybe I didn't do exactly the same things that you did, but I get that. I've done similar things. And there is something that's so healing about that. So it just penetrates to the core where we go, really? Maybe I'm acceptable for who I am? It's one of those things that I think is so misunderstood oftentimes about God. is that God actually says to us, I see who you really are. I'm the one that made you. I see who you really are, and I don't want to come to shame you. Actually, I want to come to give you life. I want to come to help you see that who I made is amazing. Who I made is this beautiful human being. And I want to make you more like that. I want to free you from all those layers that really helps me understand that I have this freedom in God. And it's not just about the rules. It's about actually becoming this person that's a full person who gets to live a fullness out there in life where we don't have to just be living afraid all the time. Codependency can really hide who I am. And I want us to know that there is a path towards freedom. That path toward freedom, for some of us, may involve seeing a therapist. I sure had to. It may involve talking with a friend who gets it, who's maybe been through some of this work and isn't judgmental or isn't going to say, don't worry about that stuff. It's not a big deal. Don't talk about that. It may be working with a sponsor in a 12-step group. Whatever it is, it may be letting yourself be known by someone else so that you don't just keep this inside. Shame is something that grows really well in isolation and in comparison. I know Brene Brown talks about that. But shame cannot grow when we expose ourselves for who we really are with another human being and really let ourselves be known to that person, not a person who's going to be really judgmental, but one who can begin to understand and help us look at, so how do you want to live? How do you want to really step into life? Telling someone else is a big part of this, because then when you are known and you know someone else, that's where a lot of this healing truly begins. One of the things I really know about relationship is you and I would love, in relationship terms, would love really more than almost anything to be truly known. And yet one of the things that you and I fear more than anything else is to be truly known. And that's why this is so difficult. So I want to invite you today is to take those things inside that you may either be afraid of being known by and begin to find a person that might be safe. Begin to find a therapist or someone who's been through some of their own work to begin to share. And then also, if you're not even really sure what it is inside that keeps you from being known and keeps you kind of stepped back and hidden, is to begin to take a look at what are some of the things that just took place that you have some feelings about. What is it you react to in day-to-day life? And those things probably give you a good idea of what you've been sensitive to, maybe where some of the pain is. So I invite you into being known and knowing someone else, which is really what intimacy is all about. We can begin to really heal more and more from this word of codependency, which is really so that you and I can become free as humans to be who it is that we really are. Thank you.